The New York Giants quarterback situation has another strange twist as the wait continues for an answer from somebody. I'll give you the latest on that and more coming up next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of the written work that we've been doing. Basically, every day we put out new articles over there, so do check that out. And as always, big welcome on into my Blue Crew community members. Great conversation, by the way, guys, in the chat room. So thank you for that. Welcome to my newcomers, my everydayers. Thank you so much for your loyalty. And of course, everybody in between. Appreciate you spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's show, folks, it is, 8:37 p.m. on Wednesday evening, and we are still waiting on an answer from Aaron Rodgers. And we have some new developments with the Giants quarterback situation. So I'm going to go over all that with you. And again, I tell you that, I'm recording this 8:37 on Wednesday evening, March 12th, just in case something happens between the time I get this out and the time you listen to it. So that being said, that's going to be our first segment. And then in segment 2, we're going to hear from Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, who's going to tell us a little bit about Chris Board, one of the linebackers / special teamers that the Giants signed in free agency. And then in segment 3, we will hear from Spencer German, who is our Locked On Browns host. He's going to tell us about James Hudson III. So we're going to continue to bring you our Locked On experts from other teams who previously the Giants free agent players that they acquired were on. So you guys can find out a little bit about what the Giants are getting. So let's get into the quarterback situation here. Oh gosh, Aaron, please make up your mind. I'd like to get out. I'd like to take my dog out for a walk. I feel like this is Aaron Rodgers' world and we're just living in it. So anyway, Aaron Rodgers still deciding whether to sign with the Giants, whether to sign with the Steelers, and now supposedly the Vikings are involved in the mix. So round and round and round we go. Where it stops, nobody knows. And Aaron Rodgers, who was officially released by the Jets today at 4 o'clock, I think he was released at 4 o'clock, right on the button, which was the start of the new league year, still has not come up with a decision. Now, depending on who you believe, it could be by the end of the week. It could be in a month. It could be any time in between. Quite frankly, look, I've got to agree with Greg Rosenthal of NFL.com about this situation with Aaron Rodgers. It's kind of sad that it has come to this for the Giants and to a degree for the Steelers, two proud franchises who are now being kind of held up, if you will, waiting for Aaron Rodgers to decide where he's going to play. Or if he's going to play. I mean, I don't know necessarily that it's a matter of money. I don't know Aaron's financial situation. I do know if you go back and you look at his historical earnings, he's probably earned more than any quarterback in the NFL. I don't know what the holdup is. Maybe he's waiting for the Giants' offensive line to settle. Maybe he's waiting for an epiphany. Maybe he's waiting for, his latest darkness retreat, assuming he's on one, to end. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know this. The Giants, unfortunately, they're in a position where they have to wait this out. They're under the pressure cooker here. They have to, win games. And whether we like it or not, he gives them the best chance to win games. All right. Now, while we are also waiting on Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, let's get the update there. Russell Wilson is headed to Cleveland. He is scheduled to meet with the Browns on Thursday. Then he is supposed to meet with the Giants on Friday. That is, if Cleveland doesn't make him an offer he can't refuse and let him out of the building. So it is possible, folks, that this quarterback carousel, and of course, Rodgers is the next domino that needs to fall, but it is possible that the Giants might come up with nobody at the end of the day with this quarterback carousel that's going on. And an interesting name that was floated out here, and this is funny because Paul Schwartz of the New York Post reported it. I had also heard this name as a possibility, but the Giants, who seem to be looking at quarterbacks who have Super Bowl experience and who have won Super Bowls. If you go and you look at the pattern, first they won at Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson's won a Super Bowl. This next guy, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was the Colts last year. Not coming back, obviously. The Colts signed Daniel Jones, old friend, to compete with Anthony Richardson. So Joe Flacco now becomes a name that if Aaron Rodgers decides he's not coming to the Giants, if Russell Wilson decides he's not coming to the Giants can look towards Joe Flacco. Now, it would not be the most ideal situation for a couple reasons. Number one, I don't believe Joe Flacco has played a full season since 2017. And it's not to say that he can't play a full season if, pressed into action, but it's kind of a risk. And here's why it's a risk. Joe Flacco is the last of the pocket passers, the pure pocket passers, the statues, if you will. He does not move around. So you put a guy like that behind the Giants offensive line that right now isn't yet solidified, boy, you are asking for some trouble there. You are taking a big, big risk. So if the Giants do have to pivot to Joe Flacco, assuming that, everything else falls apart and Joe Flacco has an interest in continuing his career, that could mean that, we know the Giants are probably going to take a quarterback, whether it's in the first round or day 2 or day 3. But that could potentially mean that if Joe Flacco gets hurt, and I'm not wishing that on anybody, by the way, but if that were to happen with the Giants, the rookie quarterback, whoever that might be pressed into action a lot sooner than, we anticipate. So that could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. I know the plan last year, as is the plan this year, or the intention, I should say, would be if there was a rookie quarterback, let him sit for a year, let him get acclimated. If they bring in a guy who is a statue, who can't move around, who can't get out of trouble if he's under duress, that's, I think, running a big risk. So really, that's what it's come down to. We sit, we wait for Aaron Rodgers, and, as each day goes by, I'm going to be very pleasantly surprised if he signs with the Giants. I know the Giants have a better offer on the table financially for him than the Steelers do. I will be very pleasantly surprised if he signs with the Giants. Look, everything that's gone wrong with the quarterback has, or I should say everything that it could go wrong with the quarterback situation for the Giants has. They swung for Matthew Stafford, which would have been a home run. They're swinging for Aaron Rodgers, which would be, let's call it a triple. All right. The Giants, bottom line, and I'll say this, until I'm blue in the face, no pun intended, they should have drafted a quarterback last year, whether it be, like a flyer or something. They didn't. We're in this situation. They gambled on Daniel Jones. They lost. Here we are. Now, how do they proceed from here? And can they make it right? That's the big question mark. All right. Coming up next, folks, we are going to hear from Kevin Oestreicher from Locked On Ravens, who's going to tell us everything we need to know about about Chris Board, the new linebacker / special teamer, a very under the radar signing by the Giants in free agency. So that's coming your way right after this. Hey, Giant fans, ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so that you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's Monarch Money, MONARCHMONEY.com. And that promo code is Locked On NFL for 50% off your first year. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And now I'm going to play a pre-tape segment I did with Kevin Oestreicher on Chris Board, the linebacker / special teamer. He's going to tell us everything we need to know about him. So that's coming up right now. All right, Giant fans, joining me now on the Locked On Giants podcast as we review the New York Giants free agent acquisitions is Kevin Oestreicher. He is the host of Locked On Ravens, and he's going to tell us a little bit about Chris Board, who we were chatting before we started recording, and he said that the Giants got a very good special teamer. Kevin, first off, welcome to the program.
I appreciate you having me on, Patricia. And I personally like this move a lot for the Giants, even from the Baltimore side of things, when they ended up losing Malik Harrison to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think a lot of people pivoted and said, okay, hey, Chris Board will be the guy they re-sign, really good special teams player. But the Giants obviously were able to offer him a little bit more than the Ravens, maybe a bigger role. I like it because Chris Board has been a very valuable special teams player for the entire course of his career. He's had 2 stints in Baltimore now, and even when he went to Detroit, New England, he's been to a lot of places. He's carved out that role. And I know for a Ravens organization that obviously John Harbaugh coming over from Philly in 2008 as a special teams coordinator, the Ravens have that eye for guys. And there's always a player or two in the Ravens organization that has that special teams title. You know that guy's going to be a stalwart for you. And Chris Board just has a way of doing that. And even when you talk about him as a linebacker, the Ravens didn't have a lot of production from a guy they expected to last season in Trenton Simpson. So they were scrambling for answers there. I mentioned Malik Harrison. Chris Board also was in that equation, having a couple of honestly really good games. He could be a very physical player. He can work in coverage very well also. I don't know what the Giants are expecting from him in terms of role, but it's not like he's unplayable as a linebacker. He has a lot of really solid traits, and for a low-cost contract, I think it's a really good move.
All right, let's start with the special teams, because obviously the Giants special team unit was, I don't want to say horrible. They weren't horrible. They had their moments, but it could have been a lot better. What does Chris Board bring to the team? I'm assuming he can play every special team. Is he a gunner, or does he play a specific role? What's his best fit?
Yeah, not a gunner. I definitely say more so just like in the middle there, getting everybody positioned, everybody situated, and even on kickoff returns, him being able to run down the field, he does have some speed to him. So being able to get down there, make a tackle, he is a solid tackler. So that's something where you don't have to worry about a guy maybe breaking free off of a Chris Board missed tackle for a second effort of 30 or more extra yards. But I think just his leadership and just his veteran presence, I mean, he's been there. He's done that for so many years now. And I think for a Giants special teams unit that obviously is looking to improve, having a guy that's been to a bunch of places, is a very productive player, and can go and make plays for you is really important because, and I know you know this, Patricia, on the defensive side of the ball, on a kickoff, let's say, when you're kicking the ball back to an opposing team, it's a lot better to pin them inside the 20-yard line on a kickoff as opposed to letting the guy break free and you start at midfield and all of a sudden your defense is working with a short field. And so I think for Chris Board, he's a player that has meant so much to a lot of different teams, not even just the Ravens. I know that's where he's played most of his time now, but even still, he can mentor guys, and that leadership shines through there. And so even if this is just a small stint for Chris Board or a short stop for him, I think that maybe some of the things that he can teach a younger special teams player, maybe the Giants want to keep around for a little longer, that also can be invaluable. It doesn't show up on the stat sheet or anything in terms of Chris Board leadership assists, but I think certainly he can bring that value to them.
Now, I was doing some research on him last night, and I saw where I want to say at least 4 seasons in the NFL that he's been in the NFL, and he's been around more than 4 seasons, but he was either first or second finishing in special teams tackles. What is it about him is, obviously it's more than just running down the field with speed. How was he, I guess, with getting off blocks and just shaking free to make these tackles?
Yeah, he's definitely good at that. I think when you talk about his abilities to even just, how to take angles correctly, play off of his teammates, I think that's a very underrated aspect of special teams in general is, you're not just sending everybody down for the football at once. You have different layers to your special teams coverage. And I think in those conversations and those strategy meetings, sometimes Chris Board can be the first one in there. Other times, other guys are going to get that first crack, and Chris Board almost has to play like safety and be that last line of defense, and he's able to do that. But I think for him being able to shed off blocks, and honestly, he's someone that special teams units have to take account for. Like you have to know Chris Board was 49 on the Ravens. You have to know where 49 is on the field there in those situations. And the Ravens have had a ton of great special teams players over the course of their recent history, especially with John Harbaugh there. And he's one of the most notable they have had because of his ability to just be a productive player every season. He's not someone that you're going to look at the box score and wonder, man, where was Chris Board this game? He's not going to have 10 tackles a game, between defense and special teams, but he'll make an impact play probably once a week, maybe once every other week. And for a special teams player that, again, depends how many snaps a guy gets on special teams based off how the game goes and the game flow. It is really important and impactful to have guys like that on your roster. So I think the Giants did a really good thing here, solidifying that unit, and also a guy that, again, can play a little linebacker for you if you need it.
All right, let's talk about that, actually. Tell me about his skills as a linebacker. Where is he a best fit on the defense, and what else can he do on a defense?
Yeah, definitely an off-ball linebacker, someone who does have a bit of thumping ability. You can use him as a blitzer as well. The Ravens used him a little bit as that during the later part of the season when they needed answers, and I think he filled in pretty well. Does have some coverage ability. I wouldn't call it the biggest strength of his game, though. I wouldn't, want to put him back there a ton in coverage, but he did have some solid reps there. I would say more as a thumper linebacker who can get downhill, make plays in the run game, and definitely more of a rotational piece. He certainly has the potential, even though he's been a veteran in this league now, like that's his role. He's a vet. I'd still say there's potential for him to take on a bigger role at that position than he's had, even more so than he had in Baltimore last season. So if the Giants want to use him more on defense than Baltimore has, I think that's totally fine, because even I think if he came back to the Ravens, that was something we were talking about on Locked on Ravens, if Chris Board came back, I feel like Baltimore would have wanted to use him more as a linebacker. So his bread and butter special teams, there's no question about it. But I think as just a defender, a linebacker, there is some thump to his game that I think people do underrate, and that's the physical defender that Baltimore likes. There's a reason they brought him back. Well, multiple reasons they brought him back last season. That was one of them. And he had games. Houston on Christmas was a really impressive game from him, and he had a couple of others too. He provided some stability to that Ravens linebacker rotation that, again, outside of Roquan Smith, was really looking for a couple of answers, and Chris Board gave them a lot.
And then finally, Kevin, let's talk about some of the intangibles he brings, such as locker room leadership, his character, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think he's someone that the Ravens definitely leaned on in the locker room for special teams leadership, because I know that when it comes to special teams, it's a lot of different positions being mishmashed together. And so for Chris Board being able to kind of give his experience away to those guys, say, hey, this is what I did, this is what I'm learning. And I think we saw that where over the last handful of seasons, Baltimore special teams unit really hasn't been all that special, but Chris Board coming back, I think, helps them in a lot of different areas. And even when you talk about the inside linebacker room too, I mean, he's a vet there as well. And while they had Roquan last year, guys like Malik Harrison and other young inside linebackers, young defenders, I think did lean on him a little bit. So I wouldn't call him the leader of the Ravens last season. I think that's definitely a stretch, but I do think that he does have those qualities and leadership qualities to him, where if the Giants want to put him in a bigger role there and say, hey, we want to really have you take on this leadership role this season, I think he'd do it by himself anyway. But he's not a guy that's going to cause you problems. He's not someone you're going to look at in the locker room and say, man, this guy's causing issues. He's a good locker room guy, good locker room presence, and someone that I think the Giants will enjoy having.
Kevin, appreciate all the intel. He is Kevin Oestreicher, host of Locked on Ravens. Please check out his work as well as all of our Locked on hosts. We have baseball, hockey, basketball, Obviously, football's going on. We've got so much here at the Locked On Network. Do check out our hosts and support their work. Kevin, I want to thank you. Giant fans, stay tuned. We will have more on the Giants free agent acquisitions here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Hey, Giant fans, March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can bet $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So go on and visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And look, coming up tomorrow, we're going to continue to hear from my Locked On colleagues. We still have to hear from Tony Wiggins. We're going to hear from Corbin Smith. These are Tony's with Locked On Jaguars. He's going to tell us a little bit about defensive lineman Roy Robertson Harris. Corbin's going to talk a little bit about Roy as well, but he's going to tell us more about Stone Forsythe, the offensive tackle that the Giants signed. And, speaking of signings, before we get into hearing from Spencer German of Locked On Browns about James Hudson III, an offensive tackle that the Giants brought in, the Giants did make, obviously, a couple moves today. They signed Forsythe, like I just mentioned, and they also re-signed Amir Smith-Marset, the receiver / kick returner, punt returner, which is a really good move. I'm really happy to see him back because he was just a wonderful addition last year. So anyway, that being said, let's cue up a video, actually, that Spencer German, the host of Locked On Browns, did for me at my request about James Hudson III, the offensive tackle, who is going to compete to be the swing tackle on the Giants this year.
Giants fans, you got yourself a new offensive tackle in the form of James Hudson III, who comes over to New York from Cleveland, where he spent the first 4 years of his career. He's a Michigan product and actually was drafted by the Browns in the 4th round of the 2021 NFL draft. It was Andrew Berry's second draft since when he came in as GM of the Cleveland Browns. And I think there was some belief at that time that he had an eye for identifying offensive line talent. He had gotten right some other picks and players. There was some thought that he had gotten the Jedrick Wills pick, his first ever first-round pick in 2020, correct? And that he had sort of found a way to build an offensive line, and he knew how to build that group specifically. And so, again, at that time, I think there was some belief that James Hudson, even as a 4th-round pick, could develop into a starting player on the Browns, front on the offensive side of the football. And I think they believe that as well. And it never really came to fruition, unfortunately, for James. But what I do think is unique about him is that he did prove that he can be a swing tackle. He can play both sides of the offensive line, left side, right side, whatever you need him to do. And that is a role that he's done numerous times throughout his 4-year tenure with the Browns, even as recently as this past year, where you had Jack Conklin coming back from his serious injury in 2023 and missed the beginning of the season. And so you had James Hudson sort of fill in along with DeJuan Jones. And then when Jedrick Wills went down, he was an obvious choice. And DeJuan Jones obviously got hurt as well. He was an obvious choice to replace and swing over to the left side and try to hold his own over there until he came down with a shoulder injury that cut short his 2024 season. But it's a guy who you kind of know what you're getting in terms of being just a decently reliable backup tackle. And what I mean by that is no, he's not going to light the world on fire. He's not the best offensive lineman out there. But if you need somebody in a pinch that has to fill in, you can get some good games out of James Hudson. He has started 17 games throughout his career, played in 49 total during his tenure with Cleveland. And so there's certainly a lot of evidence and tape out there of him going out there and having some bad games, but also having some good games. In an ideal world, you probably don't want James Hudson starting for you regularly, but there is some, there's the ability where, like, if he comes in a pinch and you need him, that he can hold his own and he can be a formidable player on your offensive line as you try to sort of keep things afloat for an injury or whatever it might be. If you look at his PFF scores, he has generally been throughout his career a better run blocker than a pass blocker. In 2022, he had one of the highest run blocking grades from PFF. And it's kind of dwindled ever since the last couple of years. He's never been a great player. He ranked last year in total grade 114th out of 141 tackles. So it's not that you're, again, getting some star-studded, Trent Williams style player. He's not that type of guy. But I think the important thing here for Giants fans to know is it's a guy that can play both sides of the offensive line, filling in a pinch, and that is some versatility that obviously can come in handy for any offensive lineman on any team, because having offensive lineman depth is massively important in the NFL.
All right. That was Spencer German, our Locked On Browns host. And I just want to say a special thank you to our guest tonight. Again, Kevin Oestreicher, who we heard from in the last segment, Locked On Ravens, and Spencer German, Locked On Browns. And all the Locked On hosts are tremendous. It's such an incredible network and really a great resource whenever you need to find out something about another team's player or the next opponent and whatnot. So I do encourage everybody, if you have time, check out the other podcasts we have, not just, NFL, we have MLB, NHL, NBA. So much going on. So anyway, before we wrap things up, what can we expect for the rest of the week? Well, obviously the big domino the Giants need is quarterback. What's going to happen there? Now, while I was running the interview with Spencer, Aaron Rodgers, I got a notice about Aaron Rodgers. Apparently he's out in California mulling over his options. So I don't know exactly if Aaron has met with the teams. I've got to think that he has had conversation with teams, or maybe, he hasn't gotten to that point yet. I don't know, but that domino obviously needs to fall. The Giants, like I said, still need to resolve the offensive guard spot at right guard, unless they plan on just rolling with Evan Neal, which I think is a little bit of a risk there because, they've got to cross-train him, and who knows if he's going to be able to make that transition. So there's still much to be done for the Giants, Joe Shane. But look, keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast. I'll bring you all the updates. I'll break down the different moves, the analysis, and we'll just keep on rolling. We're still 5 days a week, and pretty soon we'll start talking to our Locked On College hosts to find out about some of the draft picks that might be tied into the Giants. So that's all coming up in future shows here on the Locked On Giants podcast. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for this edition. Again, thank you for spending part of your day with us here, and I will see you again tomorrow. So have a good night.